So if you watched the first half of this video, you know the top was created first. If you missed it, you should find part 1 of this video and watch it to see how we ended up here. When we went to paint the base, the paint would not stick to the cheap wood, so I decided to remake the base, but this time in pine, so there would be no issues painting it. I started with 5 8-foot long 2x2 square pine strips and one 1x12 knotty pine board. So not all coffee tables should be identical, but the actual rule of thumb is that they need to be the exact height of your couch cushion. So measure from the floor to the top of your couch cushion, and remember to subtract the distance of your tabletop. I have a 2-inch riser under my tabletop, and that will give you the length of your legs. Once you have that measurement, you can start by cutting the 4 corners of your coffee table. We are going to build this upside down, and since we already have a tabletop, let's build upward from that so everything stays aligned. Before we take any measurements, make sure that everything is flush on each corner. Then you can make your marks and take your measurements. Because we want them to be perfectly flush, repeat this at each end. Don't assume each board will be exactly the same. I took just one of the 2x2s and I cut it down to 3/4 of an inch. This way it would align perfectly with the bottom of my table and match the original table design. Now cut your crossbars to join your legs. With the measurements you took before, you can now cut your 3/4 inch wide board to fit across. Cut one for each end. Remember to use the measurements from both sides. Don't assume both sides will be perfectly the same. We want this to look good. We don't care if it's perfectly square. Now grab your pocket jig and put a pocket on each end of your cut pieces. Remember that both pockets go on the same side of the board. This way, when you're screwing them in, you can hide them on the inside of the table. Put a little wood glue on the end of your crossbar, and when screwing your pieces together, ensure you clamp down your base leg. You cannot afford to let it move when you screw them together. If it does, your screw hole is permanent, and taking it out and trying to readjust just does not work because the screw will always follow the path of least resistance. I even use another board to ensure it is flush with the bottom while doing this. With both ends connected to your legs, you can repeat this process for the other side. Once complete, you can take your legs and place them back on the table. Ensure they are aligned and everything is flush again. Then you can take your measurements across from inside to inside leg. We will now repeat the same process of cutting, drilling out your pocket holes, gluing and joining together your legs. Once complete, you should have a perfect square with your legs sticking straight up. Remember that your pocket holes go on the inside of your pieces so they can remain hidden. After completing this on both sides, you can return your base to the tabletop to see how everything looks. Now we are going to join the base to the tabletop. To ensure all holes are the same depth, I will use a collar on the drill bit. I am going to adjust the collar so that it lets the bit penetrate halfway through the board. I will place 2 on each side and then 3 across the center bars. Pine is a light and strong wood, but to give the legs more support, I am going to cut corner supports for each leg. You should always consider this when your project legs are as narrow as these. Take your 2x2 and cut 4 pieces at roughly 5 inches. Then we are going to turn the miter saw at a 45-degree angle and cut off each end, giving them 45-degree angles on each side. Going back to the pocket jig, we will place pockets from the large end to the flats of the 45-degree angles. You will do this on all 4 brackets, so each flat will have its own support. Place a little wood glue on each flat and then clamp into position. Once in position, take your screws and screw them into place. Your next decision is how high you would like the shelf underneath the table off the ground. I have decided around 4 inches, and since we're doing this upside down right now, I will make a mark at 5 inches on each of my legs. Your next step is the same as before. take your measurement and cut your crossbar to fit. Cut a full 2x2 piece to fit, then with a scrap piece of wood that is the same width on its side as the 1x12, align it down about 1/4 of an inch below the top. This will serve two purposes. One will allow more wood under the plank on one side, which will allow for more weight to be placed on the shelf. The other will give it less of a lip on the surface of the shelf, making it easier for things to get on and off. Take your scrap piece to the table saw and with a dado blade cut out your groove. Start shy and cut a little more off each time until the scrap piece fits snugly. With both rails cut, we can put in our pocket holes. Place your jig on the lower half, ensuring that you will not be drilling into your slot, and place your pocket holes on each end. Going back to the marks you placed on your legs previously, place a clamp on each side. This clamp is just going to assist us in holding the crossbar into position. With the slat groove facing inward towards the center of the coffee table, lay your crossbar in place. Your pocket slots should be facing up as the coffee table is still upside down. Ensure all looks good and even. Then add a bit of wood glue to each end and then place into position. Ensure that the crossbar is flush and screw into position. Repeat this on both sides. Remember, we are only installing one crossbar. Do not install both sides. The other crossbar is just sitting on your clamps until we can get a proper measurement for our shelf slats. Then cut and install them. Now we are going to cut the shelf slats. Take your measurement from inside groove to inside groove. Grab your 1x12 and take it to the miter saw and cut your first piece. Bring it back and check your fit. Ensure that your side crossbar remains flush with the outside of the table leg once your slat is in place, because remember, it's just sitting on your clamp still. The next step is totally your preference, but you need to decide how wide you want your slats. You can cut the 1x12 in half for wider slats, or you can do like me and cut it into thirds. Either way, you will still have enough wood to cover the shelf completely. Take your first slat and use it as a template to cut the remainder of the 1x12 board. Next, we will set our fence on the table saw that will allow us to cut the pieces into thirds. When complete, we should have about 12 individual slats. To make it easy, we will paint the slats before we install them. This makes it easy to reach the sides of each slat. It proves to be very difficult to paint the sides once they're in place under the table. So while my wife is inside painting, I continue with the rest of the table. Using the same process that we have used before, we go back, take our measurements individually, cut the pieces, drill our pocket holes, apply our wood glue, and drill in each cross support. I make this up as I go along, so there are no slots on the side pieces. I like overkill, but even I think that would be a bit much for this project. Since I am working alone, I will use a clamp to hold the piece in place while I ensure it is flush with both sides, using a simple scrap piece of wood. Now the next step is overkill, but I wanted to add a little support bar to the center to tie in the base of the table to the tabletop, which will allow a little extra support in the center of the table. I have a few extra pocket holes which will allow me to screw into the frame of the tabletop. With the slats now painted and dry, we are almost done with this project. Flip the frame on its side. This will help us during the last and final steps of this project. Repeat the process of making the corner supports just like we did the first time, but this time only cut 2. Now take those 2 pieces to the bandsaw and cut them in half. Now you have 4 pieces. A bit more narrow, but perfect for where they are going. Place a bit of wood glue on each end and grab your scrap piece. Place the scrap piece in the slot and place your support up against it snug. With a hammer or a brad gun, nail your supports into place. We use brads here because the pieces are too small for pocket holes and we don't want them to split. Repeat this on both ends. Remember, the other crossbar is still not screwed in. We will not do that until all of our slots have been put in place. Next, find the center of your crossbar and place a mark. We will use this later. Take all your slats and lay them out for easy access. And then take your first slat and lay it into the bottom slot, and then while closing the top slot on each one, continue with placing in each slat. This can prove to be difficult, so if you need to get help, go ahead and wake up your teenager, insist there is no time to change into regular clothes, and helping you while wearing his pajamas is perfectly fine and you won't show it in the video. Tap down your side piece and screw it into position. I did not use glue on this sidebar. This way, if by accident any of these slats were to ever break, I could take the unglued side off for easy access to replace the broken slat. Just my call. You can glue it if you want. I took a small spacer and used it to ensure all the slats were evenly spaced. Start with centering your spacer on the mark we made previously, and then push your slats tight into your spacer. Continue until all your slats are evenly spaced. The last step for me was to add the remaining 2 crossbar supports. These might prove difficult to nail in, so grab a few clamps and glue into position, and just use the clamps to apply enough pressure until they set. After allowing enough time for my glue to set, I removed my clamps and turned the table over to the professional painter. I left the table top off while painting to speed things up, and this way I didn't have to worry about getting paint on it. Once dry, take your base and place it back on the tabletop and reattach it. Okay, you think you're done at this point until your wife sees it in the room and says, "Yeah, I just don't like the color I chose." Then you're back out in the garage taking it apart to repaint. So the final rendition is actually a little darker, and she used the leftover paint from our front door. So tell me in the comments below, what color do you like better? I kind of like the first one. It reminded me of the beach. If you missed the making of the tabletop, click the link at the end of this video. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.